Hey everyone, today we are going to show you how to create an inventory app for your company using no code. So the idea here is that we are going to build the basic structures, show you how we are suggesting you to do this, the main structures, how to create these charts as you can see here, also the transaction log and other operations that you have when you're creating an inventory app. So there are a few basics that are standard for inventory app. We are going to bring those here. However, if you want to add more, it's always possible. But this is already a really great start for your app. So the idea here is to show you a little bit of these features, some tips on how we build this. And if you guys have any other questions, just tell us and we are going to try to solve everything here during the live. So Fernando, what's the idea here for this app? How did you structure it? And for who is the target user of this kind of solution?
Cool. So the idea here is quite simple. It's an app to allow people to quickly select an item and add or subtract a certain quantity from their inventory. So this is basically for every company that has to control inventory of some kind. And one common problem is that uh, usually there's no easy way to keep track of everything that happened, things that people took out of stock, things that were put back, or and so on. So a quick example. So for example, if you're at a hospital and then someone goes to the closet and they get like one box of gloves, for example. So usually there's no simple way for you to select like one box of glove and automatically integrate into some no code too, right? So you have some processes. You have, like, for example, you use Jester for like procurement, so to buy stuff. And usually when you're using these sorts of tools of no code platforms or even low code platforms, there's no simple way for you to build this sort of structure. And in Jasper it's quite easy, right? So the idea is that one person with their own smartphone, they can just click on add or subtract an item. They select the item, they say if they're adding, subtracting, and they select they write a quantity, and this automatically um, changes the inventory quantity as well. Some other things that we have in this template is the comparison between current quantity and the minimum that you want for that specific item. So you can see, for example, that for microphone, I have 20 in stock and I want a minimum of 15, so no problems here. But for webcam, you can see that we have 11 in stock and I want a minimum of 15. And because of this, this line is red because we have conditional colors going on in this template as well. And then you have the more analytical part of it, right? You have charts, so you can see how many transactions you had per day. We're calling transactions every time that someone adds or subtracts an item from stock. You can see by item, and you have this transaction log showing everything that everyone did, and you can even export this as a spreadsheet if you need for some other purpose. So let me show you guys how this template works. So the idea here is that I have my table of items. So I have the inventory here. So for example, I have here notebook. So this is what I have in stock. I have the quantity of 31 and I have the minimum of 20. So I can click here on add or subtract, and this calls this custom super form in which notebook is already selected, and then I can just input a quantity. So let's say that I'm taking 5 notebooks out of the inventory. So I just click on subtract here. I will click on save, and you guys can see that this registered the transaction. Here I have the last row here, the first row in the transaction log. The charts are already updated, and the notebook quantities updated to 26. So all I had to do was click on this. I can do this for microphone as well. So for microphone, let's say we take two out of stock, so subtract, and automatically it updated everything, right? So microphone here, it went to 18. The charts are updated, the transaction log is updated. And just so we can show you guys one other example, I'm going to do the same to webcam. But what I'm going to do here is add webcams here. So maybe I've purchased some more, and you can see that the quantity went to 21, and the roll in the table is not red anymore because I'm above the minimum that I would like this item to be, right? And just to show you guys some other things, you can filter by item, so I can see everything that's happening with microphone, and this filters the transaction log and the charts. I can even do it, filter it a little bit further by selecting a user. So I can select my user, and it's going to see everything that that specific user did. So that's quite handy because sometimes you want to see, okay, so what is Cruz doing? What did he take out of stock? What did he replenish? And then you can
When was
just select
it?
the user here.
It's basically you can create any kind of analytics here for your um, inventory, and they could be using they could use this tool on their phone or iPad, and that they can also have these charts on their phone or iPad. But the thing is, they could be on the field, and the person that's analyzing everything, it's on a computer with all the data in real time, as soon as they just update the information, right?
Exactly. So if I click here on add subtract, if I simulate looking at this on my smartphone, so you guys can see here that this would work on a smartphone as well. So the person can just put in the quantity and just use it as they would on the computer. But this is actually quite important because a lot of systems don't work well with smartphones, right? They're not responsive. Things break. They're not resized correctly. So with Jaster, you can actually control the way that it's going to appear on the smartphone, and it's going to be usable in the smartphone automatically. It's responsive, so anything you build here is going to be usable in on the smartphone. But you could also customize it further to select how it's going to appear on the smartphone, where the charts are going to be. So you have this extra bit of customization as well. So this is the idea, and I'm just going to talk about how does this work. So it's one of the most requested templates or processes for Gesture by our clients. So the idea here is quite simple. I have a table for the inventory. So I'm going to open it, and I have the title, I have a picture for the item, I have the quantity, I have the minimum, and then I have here a formula which is subtracting the quantity from the minimum. This is going to be important for the conditional coloring later on. And I have a rich text field for specs, so I can say, or this is such and such webcams, such and such microphone, and so on. And then I have a button to add and subtract. And this button is actually just creating a record in my second database, which is item transaction. And item transaction is a very simple database. It has a title, but the title is automatically, it's just a random code or a random hash here, which is useful because then you can use this for tracking later on. I have a connection to the item in the inventory. So I have a connection to the inventory table where I can select a specific item. I have a number field for the quantity, and then I have a single option field in which I can select if it's add or subtract. So what's happening here is that I create a record here in this database, and it's automatically reaching into this table and updating this quantity. So how is it doing this? So I'm going to activate builder mode, and I'm going to click here on manage automations. So by clicking on manage automations, I can see that I have two automations here. One for add inventory and one for remove inventory or subtract inventory. You could rename it later. So for add inventory, what I'm doing here is for the trigger, I'm setting this up as when a new record is created, and then it's going to do uh, both of these actions, if conditions and then update quantities. So I create a record here, and it's going to check with the if conditions if the type is add. So if the type is add, it's going to do something. So the thing that it's going to do is the next action, which is update quantities. So I can click on it, and you can see that this is a very specific automation that we have, which most of the platforms usually they don't have this sort of automation. This is a very niche kind of automation, which is go to the inventory table, update the record that I selected here, this one, like webcam, microphone, notebook, and so on. Update the quantity field in the inventory table using the quantity field in this table here. And then I can select the type of operation, if it's add or subtract. So basically what this automation here is doing is when a record is created, check to see if the type is add. If it's add, then add the quantity to the inventory here. And also, I have the same kind of automation as remove. And the thing that changes here is that the if condition is type is equal to subtract, then I'm going to do the same thing, but instead of adding, I'm subtracting. So I'm using this automation in reverse. So I have both of these automations summing up. Basically, if I create a new record here, it's going to check the type. If it's add, it's going to change the inventory by adding the quantity here. If it's subtract, it's going to change the inventory by subtracting this
I think
quantity
it's
here.
interesting to just comment on a really common mistake, which is to just think this as a spreadsheet that repeats the information lots of times, because it's common to see if you're just managing all your inventory on a spreadsheet that you just have like one data entry for everything, and then it's like 10 sneakers, and then 12 more, and then 5 less, and so on. And you kind of you're just using the information that's supposed to be the same. Maybe you are using like a maybe you're using a product code just to make this unique, but it doesn't really work. Usually it becomes a mess, and it's really important to structure the data in the way that Cruz just did. So if you could just explain a little bit, like how did you connect this, and why did you connect on that direction the tables?
Cool. So just like you said, this is a common mistake, which is people that come from spreadsheets, they usually don't think about connections, right? They usually think about lookups. And the problem with that is that when you're not using connections, when you're not using relational databases, you have to use lookups, which are they're usually inefficient. They're prone to breaking a lot of the time, and just like I said, it's inefficient. So, for example, if you had 2,000 item transactions here, you would have to, every time you open the spreadsheet, sum everything up and then get the current uh, quantity. And this is the reason why sometimes when the operation goes on for too long, you have that spreadsheet that has like 50,000 rows, and it takes like 20 minutes to open up when you open the file. And this is a bad way to do things with a relational database, which is why we're opting to use automations, which basically are a guarantee that they're going to work as long as, of course, you use the permissions correctly.
And like
And
we were talking about the a really common use case for spreadsheets with which is like the spreadsheet kind of is the app for the inventory management. However, there's a second uh, use case as well, which I think it's even worse in a way. It's when someone have a tool that's an app builder and it's using a spreadsheet as a database on behind your app. And when you do this, you you can scale the number of inputs very fast, and then you are going to have a really bad structure for analyzing your data. And it's pretty common that this spreadsheet will eventually break for maybe a human mistake, or maybe the size, or you typed something wrong or something like this. So it's important to have a relational database as the backbone of your inventory app. It's even more important, in my opinion, than the usability of the app. Of course, both are important. You should have both. A really good app to use and a correct and the best data structure as possible. But the data structure, especially when we talk about inventory, it's really important, because one mistake could be really expensive when you maybe lose the data, or you added the wrong product on the on like a sold category or something, or maybe you told the client that you don't have a product and you have. uh, so it's really important to have both. That's why we spend a lot of time in this specific example showing you how to use the relational data part. It's quite simple. This is not like rocket science or anything. This is for non-developers, but it's important that you understand the logic, so your data input and your data for your inventory is correct.
yeah, exactly. So just to give another quick example, so there are two reasons why you should use connections instead of using spreadsheets with VLOOKUPs, for example. The first part is that by using a connection, and you can see here that if I go to item transaction, this field for item, it's a connection field, a many to one connection to the inventory table. And this is important because by making it a true connection, I can do something like this. So I can go back to inventory and I can call notebook like something like notepad. I've changed the name of the item. And if this were a spreadsheet, it would break everything because everything would be connected by name. But because I'm using relational databases, it didn't break because the connection is still maintained. If I refresh the page, the item is going to update to be Notepad as well. I'm just going to refresh it. I have a poor connection because I'm using my smartphone, but there you go. And it's Notepad here. So you can see that the connection doesn't break when I change the name of the product. And this is one of the most important things of using relational database. And the second one is if I go to manage automations and look at one of the automations that I have here, for example, this one, you can see here that if I click here and open the variable box, data box that allows me to get any information from the record itself, if I look at item, I'm bringing all of the information from the record itself. So I have the name webcam, but I have the picture, I have the quantity, I have the specs. So because I have a true connection, I can get information from within the record. I don't have only the name here. I have all of the information from that record as well. So this is why it's important to use this data. And the reason the connection is here in item transaction is because I'm using a many to one connection. So for one specific item, I can have many transactions. So I can have many transactions pointing to a specific item. So this is why the connection is here. The transaction points selects the item that I want to take out of inventory or to replace or something like that. And there's one more thing that I can do here before we finish is that we have this app, it's fully functional, you can already use it, but maybe you don't want people to use it like that. You want them to use on the smartphone, and you think this table is a little bit too small for a smartphone. So one thing that I can do here is create a new web page, and I'm going to name it mobile inventory. I'm going to give it an icon. So the emoji is going to be a phone. There you go. And then what I'm going to do is use a list view, which works better, a little bit better on mobile phones. So I'm going to resize it. You can see here that I can see how it's going to look like when I'm in mobile, right? So I can change things and resize it and so on. So I'm just going to resize it, and this list view is going to look at inventory sorted by name, so it's alphabetically, and I'm going to see the picture of the item, the quantity, the minimum, and a button for adding or subtracting. And I'm going to call this component list of items, and I'm going to use the form of the table itself. So I'm going to click on save. So now I have this as the app that people are going to use on mobile. So when they click on it, they can see the information and so on. You see that we have custom forms here. But now I can go back to the inventory app. And what I'm going to do here is add a top bar. Here you go. So the person can see this dashboard as well. But not only that, they can toggle to the mobile inventory. And I'm going to use with custom icons. No, with tab icons. Sorry. Yeah, there you go. So I'm going to click on save, disable builder mode. So now I have this part here. And if the person wants to see the mobile view, they can just click here and use this list and use this to add or subtract. So this is going to work a little bit better when using a smartphone, right? So this is what they're going to be seeing. It's way easier to manage this when using the smartphone, and they can go and say, okay, so now I'm going to take one microphone out of stock, subtract, click on save, and it's subtracted. You can see that it went to 17 now. So this
Okay,
is
or
way better for the
if
person.
you need to, maybe your company requires a proof, so you can take a picture of the item before it you give it to the client, or you use it, or you receive it, and so on. So you could add one field to take a picture, and the field to do it is the image or picture field. Um, some people have said in the past that they didn't know that that field, when they are using the phone, it's there's an option to open the camera because there's no camera icon. So maybe we're going to change this in the future, but it's possible to use your camera directly from the gesture app to take pictures about these items. Another thing that's important to say is Fernando created a specific app page or a view for the mobile. However, everything else that he has built also will be available on your phone. But sometimes it's interesting to have a dedicated app page just for the phone, because maybe you don't want all the blocks there. Maybe you just you want, I don't know, different metrics for your phone than you have on your computer. So that's the best way to do is just as Fernando did, but it's just important to remember that you also have access to all the other apps that Fernando has just created. Especially if he clicks on the hamburger menu on the left there, it will probably show like everything else that he has built, and he can navigate between them and just use it. If the person has the access to it, of course.
Exactly. So I think that's it for this template. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Yeah, we are going to make this template available for all of you. So if you have any questions, or if you are planning to start building your own inventory app, you can use this as a starting point, or just straight off the out of the box use this on your operation. So next week we will be here again. If you have any suggestions for the live, please bring it to us. We will probably talk about the AI again. So there is one example that we're going to use AI for inventory. So that's possibly what we're going to talk next year, next week. And we are just finishing up a few new automations, and we hope you will also enjoy this template and the improvement of this template from next week, or maybe the one after. So see you guys. Bye bye.
Bye.